Lion's mane is one of the most fascinating mushrooms you can grow, and it is far easier than most beginners expect. It looks like a cascading white pom-pom of soft icicles. It tastes remarkably like crab or lobster when you cook it, and it has become famous for being studied for focus and brain health. The best part is that you can grow a steady supply on a shelf in your home for a fraction of what it costs at a specialty store, where a single fresh cluster can run $10 or more. In this guide, I will walk you through the entire process from start to finish, the supplies you need, how lion's mane differs from easier mushrooms like oysters, and the exact steps to take it from a block of sawdust to a beautiful harvest in about a month. Let us begin. Before we grow it, let us understand it, because lion's mane behaves differently from the oyster mushrooms many beginners start with. In the wild, it grows on hardwood trees, slowly digesting dense wood, which tells us two things about cultivating it. First, it strongly prefers a hardwood-based food rather than straw. Second, it is a slower, more deliberate grower. So it rewards patience over speed. Instead of forming a cap and stem like a typical mushroom, it produces a single rounded mass covered in soft, downward hanging spines, almost like a frozen waterfall. Those spines are where the flavor and texture live. It is also more sensitive to dry air than oysters, drooping and discoloring if the humidity drops. So the one skill that matters most with lion's mane is keeping the air around it consistently moist. Keep that in mind, and everything else falls into place. Here's your shopping list. The simplest path for a first-time grower is to buy a ready-to-fruit lion's mane block, a bag of hardwood sawdust already sterilized and colonized, which removes the hardest steps entirely. If you want to grow from scratch, you will need lion's mane grain spawn, hardwood sawdust, and wheat bran for nutrition, plus a pressure cooker to sterilize it, because nutrient-rich sawdust must be fully sterilized, not just pasteurized like straw. You will also want a clear grow bag or container, a spray bottle for misting, and isopropyl alcohol for cleaning. For your very first lion's mane grow, I genuinely recommend starting with a ready-made block. You will learn the fruiting half of the process, get a rewarding harvest quickly, and build the confidence to tackle the full process on your next round. Let me expand on that ready-made block because it is the single best decision a beginner can make. Growing mushrooms has two halves: colonization, where the mycelium eats through sterilized substrate, and fruiting, where you trigger and grow the actual mushrooms. Colonization from scratch requires sterile technique and a pressure cooker, and it is where most beginner contamination happens. A ready-to-fruit block hands you a fully colonized, contamination-free brick of mycelium, so you skip straight to the fun visual, rewarding part, fruiting. You simply give it the right conditions and watch lion's mane cascade out of the bag within a week or two. Once you have succeeded with a block and understand what healthy fruiting looks, smells, and feels like, growing from raw sawdust and spawn becomes far less intimidating. Walk before you run, and your first lion's mane harvest becomes almost guaranteed. If you bought a ready-to-fruit block, this step is simply unboxing it and letting it acclimate to room temperature for a few hours. If you are growing from scratch, here's the substrate. Combine hardwood sawdust with about 10 to 20% wheat bran for nutrition, and hydrate the mix to field capacity, meaning a hard squeeze yields only a few drops of water. Pack it into filter patch grow bags and sterilize it in a pressure cooker at 15 pounds of pressure for 2.5 hours, because the bran makes this substrate a magnet for contaminants, if any survive. Let it cool completely overnight. This sterilization step is the main reason lion's mane is a notch harder than oysters, but a pressure cooker and patience handle it reliably. If you're starting from a block, skip ahead. This step is for the from-scratch grower. Once your sterilized substrate has cooled fully to room temperature, it is time to add your grain spawn, and cleanliness is everything here. Wipe your surfaces and hands with isopropyl alcohol. Turn off fans and close windows so no dust drifts through the air, and work quickly and calmly. Open your bag of sterilized substrate, pour in your lion's mane grain spawn at roughly 1 part spawn to 4 parts substrate, seal the bag, and shake to distribute the grains evenly. Even distribution means the mycelium has shorter distances to bridge, which speeds colonization and reduces the window in which contaminants could take hold. Then set it aside. You have just inoculated your block, and now patience takes over. Now the mycelium digests the hardwood, and lion's mane takes its time. Set your bag somewhere clean, out of direct sun, at normal room temperature in the low 70s Fahrenheit. Over the next 2 to 4 weeks, you will watch white mycelium slowly spread until the entire block turns solid white. This is noticeably slower than oysters, which can colonize in 1 to 2 weeks, so do not mistake patience for failure. Resist the urge to open the bag and check. The filter patch lets it breathe, and every time you open it, you invite contamination. Healthy colonization is bright white and smells faintly sweet and woody. If you see green or black patches or smell something sour, that bag is contaminated and should be discarded. Otherwise, simply wait until the block is fully and evenly white before moving on. Once your block is fully white, it is time to wake it up. Lion's mane fruits when it senses fresh air, light, and high humidity, so we provide all three. Cut a single clean slit or a small X in the bag, just a couple of inches, because lion's mane prefers to fruit from one spot rather than all over. Move the block somewhere with indirect natural light, which is a signal rather than food. Then focus relentlessly on humidity, the make or break factor for the species. Lion's mane wants humidity around 90%, so mist around the opening in the air several times a day, or place it in a humidity tent or chamber. At the same time, it needs fresh air, so fan it daily to clear stale carbon dioxide. High humidity plus fresh air at the cut site is the exact recipe that calls the mushroom out. This is the rewarding part. Within several days of cutting the bag and raising the humidity, white tissue begins to bulge out of the opening. At first, it looks like a smooth, brain-like blob, almost coral. Then, over the following days, that blob develops its signature soft spines, which lengthen and cascade downward like a frozen white waterfall. It can grow surprisingly fast at this stage, so check on it twice a day. Your only job now is to maintain that high humidity because if the air dries out, the developing mushroom will turn pink, orange, or brown at the tips and the spines will stop forming properly. A healthy lion's mane stays bright white and plump. Keep misting, keep the fresh air gentle but present, and let it cascade. Timing, the harvest is the final skill, and lion's mane gives you clear visual cues. Harvest when the spines have grown to roughly 1/4 to 1/2 inch long and the whole cluster is still bright white and firm. Do not wait too long. Once the spines start to yellow, brown, or get very long and stringy, the mushroom becomes bitter and past its best. To harvest, simply grip the entire cluster at its base where it meets the block and twist it off gently, or slice it free cleanly with a knife. Harvest in the morning when it is firm. A well-grown block often produces a generous cluster, and remarkably, you are usually not done, because that same block can fruit again, which we will cover in a moment. 2 final rewards. First, cooking. Lion's mane has a texture and flavor uncannily like crab or lobster, which makes it spectacular, simply torn into pieces and seared in butter until golden with a pinch of salt. The trick is to cook it long enough to drive off its moisture so it browns and turns meaty rather than steaming soggy. Second, do not toss that block. After harvesting, keep it in its fruiting conditions and rehydrate it if it feels light by soaking it in cool water for a few hours. In 1 to 2 weeks, a second flush will often form from the same cut, and sometimes a third after that. Store your fresh harvest unwashed in a paper bag in the fridge for up to a week. Though like all mushrooms, lion's mane is at its absolute best eaten fresh. Let us bring it all together. Lion's mane prefers hardwood, grows a little slower than oysters, and lives or dies by humidity. Start with a ready-to-fruit block to skip the hardest steps, or sterilize a hardwood and bran substrate and inoculate it cleanly if you grow from scratch. Let it colonize to solid white. Cut a small opening, then give it high humidity, fresh air, and soft light. Watch the white spines cascade out, harvest while they are still bright and firm, sear it like seafood, and rehydrate the block for a second flush. That is the entire process, and it is well within reach for a beginner. If you want our complete playbook with exact recipes, troubleshooting, and guides for every species, it is linked in the description. Subscribe and grow along with us, and go grow yourself some lion's mane.